After understanding the neuronal processes and how recognition, the sensory perception works out, it's better to understand how this perception is processed and interpreted afterwards. So brain processes it, up to that point we understood. Then we need to see that after processing, it needs the output to come out, right? So we understood perception, then we understood processing. Now it's up to the responses that comes out, or the output that comes out. So the responses are sort of reactions or the responses of a particular stimuli. So stimuli comes in, is perceived the body, is regulated inside our body, and then the body responds in a particular sense. So the responses can be excitatory. Excitatory refers to initiation or increase in the velocity or increase in the occurrence of the particular action that has been already done. So I mean, if a process is not yet started, then excitatory response talks about the initiation of the process, or if the process is already continuous, then it talks about increase in the occurrence. Okay, it might be increase in the velocity of the object, or it might be increase of the occurrence of the same thing. Then they talk about inhibitory, where if ongoing process is going on, then stopping the process, or might be decreasing the velocity or occurrence. So yeah, so these are two aspects of it, and then there is neutral. That means it doesn't initiates neither stops, but it functions as a neutral system where it can do both of it or it can do neither of it. Okay, these kind of responses. I mean, you perceive many responses. We actually do not need a subtle excitatory state or inhibitory state. You just continue doing that. I mean, it helps you continuing that process. Okay, so that you accept that and you continue the process. Some lead you to do it faster and faster, like a punishment or a reinforcement, or some dip down or decrease your speed of the process. That will be stress, but some signals actually make you do it continuously, maintain the same speed. That kind of neutral responses. So all of the responses that come in are processed by brain. Okay, so we understood how a stimulus is perceived by signals and senses, and then sensors generate nerve impulses which create a flux of charge and the movement throughout the neurons dendrite, then axon, then neurons dendrite, then axon hillock, then axon, and then synapse and synaptic interaction happens. And at the end of synapse, there is release of neurotransmitters, which again are perceived by the next dendrites of the neuron, and the next neuron or the interneuron actually transmits the electronic potential. Okay, so the electron potential or the action potential again transmitted throughout the neuron and then reaches down the brain or the spinal cord or down the spinal fluid and is responded back with respect to a reaction. That might be change in hormonal levels, that might be release of some fluids, that might be muscular movements or etc. And these reactions actually create a response out in the effector organ. So this is called a reflex arc. I mean, you see a pain is so when you poke a pin, it is perceived as a pain. The first signals transmit as an electric signal and goes to the effector spinal system or the neural nervous system, and the nervous system again responds back with the reaction to the muscle, and the muscle tells it to retract back, right? So this is a very short span process which happens quickly. I mean, it is reflex happens usually subconsciously, where you don't actually know about it, and it is involuntary response that happens to a particular reaction. So the reflex arc also responds to a particular system of entire behavioral organization. Okay, so the reflex or the thought that happens, cyclic process. So one comes in, understands and respond. Okay, so reflex arc happens that happens with respect to spinal cord and vertebral system, that is. So reflex arc usually the virtue of peripheral nervous system, which is directly concerned with the spinal cord and interactions with it. Apart from that, it happens quickly and sometimes a result of imprinting or instinctive behaviors. Okay. Then understanding learning is different aspect of the cognitive abilities. It's more enhanced version of a cognitive response. That means where you perceive and store information. So learning is a long-term storage of information which gives out a behavioral response. Okay, so you perceive and keep assessing and store that of responses that you have done throughout your life, and you then assess all the information that you have to give out a particular behavioral response later in your life. Okay, so types of learning, there might be different kind of learning or learned behavior, which can be imprinting. Imprinting, as you know, talks about learned behavior in a particular critical period. Then conditioning are different associative behaviors. Okay, conditioning refers to behaviors that are associative. You trigger a stimuli, the stimuli is associated with another stimuli, and that gives out a behavioral response. Habituation and sensitization talks about non-associative behaviors. Okay, habituation and sensitization talks about non-associative behaviors. So they are not associated. The response to the stimuli is directly linked to the stimuli only. Okay, now there are multiple levels of learning. First, learning happens with individual experiences. Individual learns on its own, and that transfers to the group or the kin, my family. Okay, now the family, there are multiple families which have different kind of tradition, different kind of cultural structures, and all this information group together to form a cultural traditional system. Okay, so the cultural inheritance of learned behaviors happens to form different sects or different groups of individual or races of individual, right? So this is how individual learning grows up to group and cultural learning. Okay, now coming to imprinting. Imprinting is basically kind of learning activity that happens in a certain critical period. A critical period refers to a growth period which is quickly after their birth or after their ability to perceive senses. And that critical period might range up to 10 months, 10 days, depends on the kind of species that they are concerned with. Now, in this period of learning, whatever you learn gets imprinted, gets remained in your mentality and your or in your learn habits, and that form a subconscious or unconscious setup of continuous activity. I mean, the next time you perceive that signal, you'll respond in such a way that you have responded during that critical period, or they learned during that critical period. Now, imprinting could be filial. Filial refers to the parental imprinting, okay, where you learn something from a parent in that critical period. It might be sexual. Sexual imprinting talks about a specific preference to a sexual mate, okay, which is imprinted with the behavioral activity during the critical period. So an experiment was conducted with respect to zebra finches, and zebra finches had, this ornamental so in zebra finches, this ornamental structure was taped on their head, and it was seen how offspring preferred their mates, okay, when they grew up. So when the chicks were shown parents with ornamental ornaments, basically, so it was seen, that if the parent or one of the parent or both of the parent had the ornament, then the chicks actually preferred ornamented mates. Okay, and in a control group, when one parent or both of the parent did not have the ornaments, then the mate preference of the offsprings was none. So preferred either an ornamented one or a normal one. So the thing is, again, one interesting fact that they saw is that the preference of mate actually resulted with the ornaments and structure of the opposite sex. I mean, if the mother had ornament, then the males offsprings preferred ornamented females, and if the father had ornaments, then the female preferred males with ornamented heads, vice versa. So they had the sexual preference of the opposite sex. Okay, and then comes limbic imprinting. Limbic imprinting are associated with the limbic system. Limbic system usually stores information and memories throughout your lifetime. So once you perceive a system of, once you're afraid of something, you actually are afraid throughout your lifetime. You don't know why you're afraid, but you are afraid throughout your lifetime. So it might be ghost. People have taught us to be afraid of ghosts. We don't know why. Because in our mindset, since our old times, since we were kids, our parents or someone told us that ghosts are need to be afraid of. Okay, they are fearful and you don't know why, but that creates an imprinted, fear for ghosts. It might be fear for spiders, it might be fear for water, it might be fear for something. So the fear that, phobia that we talk about, so that is imprinted in your mind. You cannot actually take it out. So that kind of imprinting is called limbic imprinting. Now, there are multiple activities which you instinctively or subconsciously or unconsciously avoid, like taking chocolates from strangers. So it's been taught in our kids since we are kids that we have this ability to a habit of not accepting things from strangers directly. Okay, we take a time to process it out and then respond to it. Similarly, this kind of interaction of asking question with teacher, we have This fear of asking and talking to teachers have been so imprinted in our limbic system, in our minds, that we actually refrain ourselves from asking direct question to the teacher. If it is required, then only, but we do not have a certain interaction with the teacher like a normal person. We have a certain pedestal. So we put our teachers in a certain pedestal, and it's like they are some other person, they are some other beings, and we are some other beings. We do not have a connection between them, and that is being taught in our system, so that gets imprinted. So even it remains through our lifetime. Similar to getting less marks, the fear of getting less marks, again, you learn it from your parents, and then you also teach your students. You also teach your students, you also teach your kids, and that happens. So yeah, these kind of many interactions or many kind of small things that we remember are instinctively put up or imprinted in our brain, and we actually do that and process that information, pass that information to the next generation as well. Coming to learning is a process of conditional or an associative structure of intake of information which you regulate and maintain throughout your lifetime. So learning is a process of continuous intake of experiences, responses, storing them down, and to assess it to formulate the idea of what will be the next response. Okay, so it can be conditioned responses are also called as associative responses. Associative response, in the sense they are associated with multiple stimuli. So one stimuli is particularly conditioned or unconditioned stimuli, and there is second stimuli, that is conditioned stimuli. For example, salivation of a dog by watching a food is unconditional stimuli to unconditioned response. Okay, so the food is unconditional stimuli, the response is salivation is unconditioned. Now when a bell is ring, it is neutral, so there won't be any response, right? But when a bell is continuously rang with availability of food, then so the salivation or the unconditioned response to the food will be initiated with the neutral stimulus, and the neutral stimulus will again now become a conditioned stimulus. So that will initiate a conditioned response. So classical conditioned response. So the classical conditioning talks about how one particular signal or one particular stimulus is associated with other stimulus. Or sometimes we also do thing because it seems more available, or it is beneficial. So in that sort of senses where we are measuring with the response of either it will be good or bad, then that is operant conditioning. Operant conditioning talks about reinforcement and punishment, where if you are providing a certain sort of benefits after a particular activity, then that will be reinforced, which is called positive reinforcement. And if you don't provide a particular benefit, then that will be negative reinforcement. That means you are not taking out the stimulus, but you are not providing any benefit to it. Okay, so that the product of doing it will be regulatory. Then there is punishment, which you actually provide a punishment for not doing the activity, which is negative kind of influence, but that is not actually negative reinforcement. So there is a difference with that. Okay, then coming back to non-associative learning talks about repeated application of a same stimulus. So if I repeat the same stimulus over and over, then you'll be getting habituated to it and you won't respond to it. So like if I'm beating someone, then up to a limit I can beat that person, and then after that limit it will get habituated and the beating won't be any more painful. Yeah, so that is how a negative exponential function is received, and it will decrease over time with the stimulus presentation. So it is a negative interaction. More the number of stimulus, less the number of response. Okay, so habituation is working like that. Spontaneous recovery talks about a certain period of time after which the habituation will wear off. So let's say if I'm beating for a continuous time and I leave that for a year or so, and then after a year I again beat it down, so the pain will again recover. So that is spontaneous recovery. So spontaneous recovery talks about a certain gap of period after which a stimulus will again entice a certain signal. And sensitization talks about repeated administration of the stimulus, which is associated with another stimulus. So there are like two stimuli. So imagine a situation where I have been beating you for a lot of time, but after a certain time limit you got used to it. But the thing is, when you got used to it, certainly I started shouting on you as well. So it became a more fearful experience. You might not have been feared of that much of with only shouting, but because it is associated with a painful experience, the shouting will entice a larger pain. So that is what sensitization is all about. No, so it becomes a more sensitive issue because it was associated with a habituated or a continuously pain structure. So repeated administration of stimuli result in progressive amplification of that response. As I said, shouting was not a amplified response that you could give on. Okay, but because it is associated with a repeated stimulus, it became a progressively large response. Okay, so it is often characterized by enhancement of the response. So these videos actually talk about habituation, spontaneous recurrence, sensitization in detail. And the experiment was done in Skinner box. So if you know about it, or if you don't know about it, then the experiments were actually called as Skinner's box.